On behalf of the Hindu and our partner IBM, I'm welcoming you all to AI at Work. It's a series of events that we have been conducting, and this is the fourth roundtable that's happening. And we have a very interesting team today, and other people from varied domains who have assembled today. And it's going to be very interesting for me also to learn a lot from all of you today. The theme for today is navigating AI investment and scalability strategies to drive ROI in an evolving landscape. I think the hype behind AI is gone, and now we are actually gripping with the reality of what it can do for us. And the questions have started coming in: what is the ROI? Right. So that's the stage today, and I think input from all of you is going to help to shape that how this ROI has to be seen and how we have to take this forward. As adoption is intensifying, we need to look at how investments in AI is measurable, and in what are all the various parameters using which we can measure. The traditional parameters of top line, bottom line does not work when you look at investments in AI and returns on AI, right? So we need to understand what are the other ways that we can actually look at ROI from AI investment itself. So we have taken this broad theme into 3 sections. So we will take each section and then go around discussing about the various points on each of the section. And the first section is the ROI imperative, as we call, because any investment requires an ROI at the end of the day. And how do we turn the cost from AI into a value? How we can create value out of cost that you're putting in AI? That's the first theme. So if you look at some statistics, right, in terms of this specific aspects, 200 plus billion is being invested in AI in 2025 alone so far by various industries, and only 25% of the organization are able to even measure whether they are getting any value out of it or not. And 70% of the AI initiatives has failed to go beyond the pilot. Right? It's stopped at the pilot stage itself, right? And whichever organizations that leverage AI for revenue generation by using like personalization or predictive models, which is not Gen AI, which is classical AI, they have seen returns. Okay, so we have to be very clear when we speak about AI to differentiate between, for want of an alternative word, I would say classic AI and Gen AI, and then treat them independently, and where possible, treat them together also, right? So there is, if you look at a formal value framework, less than 30% of organizations have a formal framework today. The remaining don't have. They are still grappling to find what sort of framework we need to have, right? And there is a big misalignment between the CFO and the CIO, CDO team in terms of what happens to the AI investment itself, because we don't have a common nomenclature to discuss when it comes to AI. That being the very first theme, we need to first look at how do organizations define and measure ROI beyond the traditional ROI measuring models, right? So I would put this question to Mr. Ajay, but I guess I would do an introduction before we start the question and answer session, because we have very varied panel here. I would start from my left. We have Mr. Rohit Kumar Agrawala, who is Director of Finance from Chennai Petroleum Corporation Limited. Welcome, sir. And we have Mr. Satyan Kumar Jadeja, Consulting Strategic Sales Lead with the BFSI segment from IBM. And we have Sujata, Head of AI Security from the Zoho Corporation. We have Dr. Ilankumaran Kaliamoorthy, who is the CEO of Chennai Apollo Hospitals. And we have Mr. Jegadeeswaran, who is Senior General Manager IT with TVS Automobile Solutions. We have Durgaprasad Swaminathan, who is the EVP and CIO for Cholamandalam Finance and Investment Company. We have Sindhuja, who is the Digital Lead with Sundaram Medical Foundation. And our own friend Nagaraj, who heads the Data and Analytics with the Hindu Group. I have Mr. Ravi Balakrishnamurti, who is the CEO from Sundaram Medical Foundation. And we have Mr. Ajay Thomas John, who is the Group CEO from the Shriram Group. And we have Mr. Santosh TG, Global CEO from Switch Mobility. And we have Mr. Sudhir Warrier, who is the CEO from Sundaram Finance Group. And of course, another Rohit we have here, who is from his advisory data and AI specialist for India and South Asia from IBM. And we have Mr. Sankaran, who is Head Technology and CEO for City Union Bank. So if we look at the domains, we have very varied domains, and probably I'm just trying to calculate. I might require an AI model to understand what would be the number of years of experience all of us collectively would have actually, right, today. Very interesting. So how organizations should define and measure AI beyond the traditional aspect? That's the thing, and I would like to put that question to Ajay first.
It's a very interesting question, right? I mean, especially considering you define classical and generative AI. I think, see, I'll tell you out of my experience what we've been doing at Shriram, so that's more related as well. One, what we look at is doing is what are the problems which can be defined, which can be solved, uh, where can we actually see ROI in it, right? I'll give you some of the examples. We are into financial services. Contact center is something which is integral to our entire business. How do we reach to our customers? How do you ensure that this quality of calls which are going out are much better? How do you look at understanding, building models around which customers can actually be reached out to, if the response rates are good, build sentiments around it, and things like that. So that's the classical part of it. The generative part is about getting voice AI into place, right? Can we actually figure out ways where we can curate things, right? And randomly giving calls to callers, increasing headcounts, physical headcounts as well, right? There's also investment into real estate. How do you look at substituting that is one of the use cases that we solve for. Um, then on the other side, what we also look at is how do you look at measuring costs which are today going out on the physical infrastructure and any costs which are going out, right? And we look at problem statements where our billing is going to be quite significant there. And we look at solving for if there is a technology which is available for us to reduce it further, we look at substituting it. We start with some POCs. I would say things which we are very clear about, which are going to be successful. We go all out, which we believe has gone through the maturity curve. For us, a success curve is much more important than anything else. We define technology in terms of which part of your success curve is this technology. In terms of AI, let's say for example, it's voice, or if it's image, or if it's let's say for example, anything related to content which is there, right? Which part of the maturity curve is this in? Is it early stage? Is it growth, or is it something which is matured in a certain state where you can productionize it right away, right? So we define where this capability is, and if this capability is something which is actually significant to our advantage, we go about quickly quickly moving away from the POC, even productionizing it directly, because we believe in that capability. There's enough maturity. We've seen enough systems there. The second piece is riding on innovation, experimentation, right? Where we believe there are newer things which are coming up. We fix a budget and a cap on it, saying that X percentage is what we want to do, nothing beyond it. Good if it yields us results. We'll also see that I'm not looking at a binary response there. This is going to be a positive output or a negative output. We look at what kind of incremental responses have I got, what kind of incremental successes have I got, even before I sum up on whatever we need to be looking at. That gives us quite a bit of learning. We understand where we scale, where we fail, and more importantly, we also know what needs to be adopted and where exactly are we lagging behind. Some of these things are what we've brought in as a structure so that we're not going all out. We're quite traditional in the way in which we operate. Our segments are quite varied within our own base. One side I have the commercial vehicle business, the other side I have retail business. So both are quite distinct in the way we operate. So we transition it in a certain way that this technology can be used in from all these varied products that we have.
Very interesting that the point that you spoke about success curve. I'll keep this and come back to that in a while. And Mr. Shankaran, very related segment, but you are into the banking. So how do you look at ROI from AI itself?
Good afternoon. So before launching any product, we need to have three segregations: one for regulatory and another one for competency in the market, third one for customer convenience. These are all the three factors we take into consideration for any initiative that may be this a general system or it may be AI or something. For example, with respect to regulatory, in the sense we will not be in a position to measure any ROI or something like that. They have given some target date, we will be in a position to do the compliance. Then only we will be in a position to survive in the industry. Fine. And with respect to customer convenience, in the sense daily just earlier in the sense customers are also very much convinced to one bank. They are also coming and getting the service and everything. Nowadays, they didn't go any bank branch or something like that. Even normally they are also asking when you came to the branch or something like that. They told 10 to 15 years back I just visited the branch. I don't know. I am also daily keep on doing the transaction to the bank and this mobile banking. I am also comparing PVA and years of some other banks. You are also doing some other. Just these are all the things we will be in push to do. Actually, for the survival or to get the better business and doing the better customer convenience, we will be in a position to do that. Point number two, competence. Competence in the sense we are also having some top level bank whenever the comparing some foreign bank and visitor banks and Indian bank. We are also doing some market study. What are all the services they are also offering? Then we are also in a position to match it. Then finally we are also taking into consideration as I think Ajay is rightly pointed. We are having some cap. Based on that, we will be in a position to take a call. After the months in time or 2 months or 3 months, we are also doing the regression. The what we that the product we launch, how are we going to what about the customer base, adaptability or something like that. Based on that, we will be in a position to do that.
Now coming to you, Santosh. So I know that we have discussed that the amount of data that your company actually handles from the various vehicles that you are monitoring. So how do you actually look at an ROI for an AI in your industry?
So good evening all. Uh, I come from Switch Mobility, which is manufacturer of electric vehicles. We don't call ourselves as a manufacturing company. We call ourselves as a technology company, because the name of the vehicle, what itself is highlights is we say that as an SDV, which is software defined vehicle. So that's where Suresh started up saying that in your industry, in your company, you are capturing so much of data. As he rightly said, today we capture approximately 1.5 terabyte of data every day from the vehicles. We collect approximately around 160 to 170 parameters of data from the vehicle, right from the movement till when it is getting charged, how it is being performed. So for us, the AI is something which is always an ROI cannot be tagged to numbers. While CFO will not be happy to hear this saying that it is not tagged to numbers, but for us, ROI we calculate in three major things. One is improved quality, improved efficiency, and improved life. And all these things are around the ecosystem of the vehicles. Interestingly, our line of business is not a very profitable margin business because we don't sell vehicles. For many of you, probably this may be new. We manufacture, but we don't sell vehicles. Like the IT infrastructure, IT applications, which is into PaaS, SaaS, and IaaS, we call ourselves as MaaS, which is mobility as a service. Today, I think many of you will be witnessing a lot of electric vehicles which is running on roads, and all these vehicles are assets of the company. And we work along with the STU state transport units and run those vehicles on kilometer basis. The reason I'm telling this is that every single kilometer of the vehicle being running is what the money which we get. And AI plays a very important role in this, because if the bus is broke down on the road, it's a direct loss for the organization. So the quality, the efficiency, and the life of this product is much more important. And we are already working on various AI things. Let me take quick examples of on all these three things, what we do and how we calculate ROI. First and foremost, if I have to go on the reverse order, the improvement of life. For us, the heart of the vehicle or the neural system of the vehicle is battery. If my battery is able to perform even 1 day better with good life, which means that the number of kilometers which my vehicle will be running is more. And with the AI, with the predictive tools, what we do is we analyze the life of the battery cells. The cell life is being analyzed. There are certain POCs which is being done, where we find out how the mechanism of the cell charge is happening. Okay, I think many of us will also agree to the point that our mobiles, it is always not advisable to charge 100%. It has to go, it has to be charged when it is at 10% and at least have to disconnect at 95%. No fast charging is also good for the mobiles, and the same thing applicable. So the AI what we are working in is to give some kind of an predictive analytics for us to say, okay, the life of this particular cell is going to be in danger. So that is one thing which we are working on. The second thing is efficiency. Today, when our car is broke down on the road, we can go to the nearest petrol station, get the petrol filled in. But just imagine an EV vehicle standing in the road. You can't go and get a battery and then put it on into our vehicles, like at least in the commercial vehicles. So the efficiency improvement with an AI, what we are actually doing it, there are auto alert systems which is coming across. We have a 24/7 command center where this agent which is running on our system allocates or highlights critical issues which is coming on into the vehicle. And this is a very, very typical use case where we are seeing a better ROI because of the AI tool, where it gives the chiller temperature or the battery life or the battery charge temperature, which is all coming in across. This AI predicts and then gives us a very well information so that we alert the drivers. And we are actually going one step ahead, where my friend here on the right side is telling about the voice-based AI. So we are also looking in for a solution where when the vehicle is, the chiller temperature is going beyond 35 degrees, there should be a voice assistant for them to help inform the drivers that, hey, take some action. The last one is improved quality. When I spoke about the vehicle examples for these two cases, the quality is something where we are looking in our own employees' quality. Today, there are a lot of tasks in our day-to-day activity which is being done by people, which can actually move from an AI perspective, the agentic AI. Very class example, very simple example is invoice processing. Invoice processing is something which is being done in many industries through our classic AI, but we are going one step forward, implementing agentic AI, and we are live today. And this, if you ask me a question, is it going to replace humans? Definitely, answer is no. There is always HIL, human in loop, which is there across. And the current people who are working on this particular activity are retrained and retasked to do several other activities. So from our organization perspective, the three important things is improved quality, improved efficiency, and improved life. This is where we see our ROI.
So we saw three different industries, and coming to you, doctor. So how do you look at continuous value capture from AI investments?
Thank you so much, Ashley. I think I can relate a lot from other industries, especially automobile, all these areas. I think healthcare is kind of a different vertical. I think we have four stakeholders in this vertical. One is the first stakeholder is the patients, who are our customers. Second stakeholder, who are all the providers, like the doctors, nurses, they're all the providers. Third stakeholder will be the organization, which runs the hospital. And the fourth will be the support organization, like insurance companies, service companies, provide support on the background to run the organization. Now we need to understand how the value is being captured in all these four verticals. For example, it's not only about the cost reduction we are talking about in healthcare, because the value what we see in healthcare is completely different. We have to understand how this artificial intelligence creates value for all these four stakeholders separately. We will talk about the customers, our patients first. The first and foremost is how it improves the outcome. That's a clinical outcome. For example, if a patient comes for preventive health check, if artificial intelligence can predict what kind of disease the patient is having, and it can tell us how long it will take for the patient to get certain diseases. It may take 2 years, it may take 4 5 years. If you are able to get those kind of predictive analytics, I think it will definitely improve the clinical outcome. This is one example. There are so many artificial intelligence systems available for clinical decision making within the healthcare to offer better clinical outcome. That's one value we get out of this. Second, to improve the capacity, like any other industry, to improve the capacity and throughput. The typical example is now we have started using AI-assisted reporting of X-rays. Previously, used to take 4 hours at least if in a busy schedule for a patient to get X-ray reporting. Now the time has come down to less than 20 minutes. That's the kind of throughput or capacity building has happened in healthcare. And if you take organization risk reduction, that's another big area. For example, if you are able to use PMR, actually reduce the cost, which is artificial intelligence guided, we are able to reduce the risk because there are so much of medical legal issues can happen with the wrong prescriptions or wrong documentation. Artificial intelligence can definitely help in terms of risk reduction. There are so many areas we can talk for others in terms of how AI can create more value in healthcare. I think I just spoke a few samples.
I think very happy to hear that there is one industry where ROI is not a problem when it comes to AI investments, right? Because I have been in a few other webinars where ophthalmologists had come and told about how they are using AI to find issues with the eye, but by not using that means you don't need a doctor there. If you want to send somebody to rural areas, they can send the person with the instrument. Instrument will do the first level screening, so that they only get the 10% actual cases back to the hospital. So that's very happy to see, hear that, doctor. Coming to you, Mr. Rohit. So how do you see that value from AI investments can be on continual basis observed?
So I'm a CFO, and
That's the reason I came to you finally on this topic.
and HR reports to me in this present role. So I was, let's start on a point of ROI or continuous value. ROI, you call it ROI or value. See, when your cost of capital is 9%, someone tells you get 10% or 11%, that is how you see what is the risk percent. And when someone tells the payback is 2 years, do you look at ROI? You stop. So I'm CFO, I'm a hard task master, I know what has to be done and where to get the bulk of it. So when I look at be it ROI or continuous value, I have a framework. The kind of framework we look at is pain points. What are your biggest pain points? What are the pain points you have not been able to solve over the period of time? And what is the potential if that pain points can be solved? It means even the attempt is priceless. And having said this, let's understand again the industry, as some of our colleagues said, unless you understand the business, you can't understand how, what kind of framework they will adopt, what kind of value emerges, and what kind of application or tools we use. So again, what is the industry? I'm a petroleum industry, so in the country is crude scarce, it has to be imported. So every import that you save is pricey to you, to the country. Second, not only capacity, if your yield improves, that much of crude intake reduces. So again, it's pricey. To give a thumb rule, if I can improve 1% efficiency, it gives me a margin of 700 crores. Now, from a cost perspective, value perspective, 0.1% is 70 crores. So you can understand, how I can forget about cost coming to value. And now let me bring in some of the aspects which impacts them directly. You might have seen products like petrol, diesel, aviation turbine fuel, LPG. But this is no one unit, no one product that counts. So basically, it's crude, primary units, secondary units, tertiary units, and blends come from each of them. And then blends are pulled. There are a host of specification, 8, 10, all has to meet, and the product comes out. If that is so, then the opportunity is not at one place. The opportunity is there at each of these places. And if I am telling few examples in this matrix, the real matrix will be 100x of this, and that is humanly not possible. So maybe what is happening today, because it is humanly not possible, I am doing whatever is possible. So there are a lot of other things which is possible through AI, and I am not attempting it. Let me take an example. The flare management. Whatever is going to flare is inevitable. The more I can reduce flare, the more I can, again that 0.1% metric and 1% metric goes. VR management, residue management. Through processing first go, you can take a yield of 50-60%. You would like to process the residue, the cost per processing will be huge, and you try to extract value. If you can manage them better, otherwise it affects your capacity. If you can do it, again value emerges with the same input output. Then there is desired result versus actual results. You buy a product thinking a slate, what is the property of the crude and what yield it will give, which unit will give what, and then what is actual. And then this fine tuning has to be done as early as possible. If it is happening 8 hours today, you can reduce it to half an hour, then the machine starts spinning it. So even with these 3 examples, when you go about, some of these problems which have not been solved, actually the paybacks may be in months. And to be fair with you, in the last few years that we have seen, there are projects which tries to solve some of these through data intervention. And let me do one more thing. We talk about data, and earlier we talked about structured data, unstructured data, qualitative data. In an industry like me, the complication that I am talking about, all of these data are existing because of continuous process plan, no manual intervention. It's all closed. All kind of data exist. Only thing I don't know which data in combination of what will give me what money. So with these kind of thing, I have seen paybacks as 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and that too significant amount of outcome that can come. So if you ask me, yes, maybe as a role, I asked for returns. But when I set targets like this. I said, why not let's go to the pain point that is not been solved in a period of time. And then even someone is attempting and there is a possibility, it's good enough because the returns, when it comes, the returns are sizable and
I think that pain point I want to take Dr. Sanjida's inputs on from a clinical standpoint. So where do you think that AI helps you to address pain points?
Thank you, sir. So I just, when I was listening to Mr. Ajay, I just wanted to second him the moment he completed his thoughts. Literally, in most of these cases, so far, the kind of electronic medical records that we have been having in the hospital, wherever I have worked before, the data entry itself used to be a pain point for us, for the clinician. So much of information, each of us will enter a different diagnosis in a different format. And now that all this AI and everything has come, we are now being kind of asked to go back, learn, enter the data in a way that how it is supposed to get into the system. So much of training is happening from our CEO. Actually. So how we go on this is by the use cases that he was explaining. We want, as a clinician, I would want more time to invest or spend with my patient. My patient wants to spend more time with me, and the process, the journey of the patient from entry to exit should be smooth. So, and the concerned care teams, all the be it ICU or emergency, their workload should be reduced. But definitely not by creating more dashboards or increasing complexity with all the AI stuff. But of course, if these models can help us with the kind of pain points that I was giving you, or by cutting down the cognitive burden on the clinicians, those are all the pain points that we would want as a clinician, the AI teams or the people to work for.
Very interesting point, the cognitive burden, because that was one area when I actually wrote an article on how to measure ROI. So one of the point is how it helps to improve our cognitive capability. Yeah. So that was one, that value creation aspect of that. So I'm glad that you brought that up. We have one unique person here who comes from a different industry where they provide products and services to the rest from Zoho. So I come to you, Sujata. I think how to avoid the POC trap. Because I know in your environment you have to do lots of POCs to, of course, for internal product and other requirements. But based on your experience within your industry where you generate products for other customers use, so what would you advise how others, where we try an internal POC, how do we not get into this POC trap?
Actually, very nice question. Thank you for that. This is something that we see in a lot of customers too. When you do a POC, you assume such picture perfect conditions. You assume that you have perfect data, clean data, noise reduced and all of it. But when you take it to production, you have a plethora of challenges. One, data availability will be scarce, especially in the enterprise segment when you have so many regulations. You can't really touch any data just like that. So your data availability is going to be scarce. And when you think of deploying too many big models, talk about the LLMs, the biggest elephant in the rooms, that's not going to be the answer for everything, right? There's so many constraints here. So what we would say, not falling in the POC trap, is first is to assess how digitally mature you are to first start in the AI option. So typically organization, I'll probably cite an example here. You would email the payroll team or finance team for transactions, but you typically call the facilities team saying the AC is not working at this location or there's a lighting issue. Tomorrow, if you want to build a dashboard saying how many electrical supplies should I procure to ensure there is smooth functioning, you won't have the data today. But in the POC, you would have assumed you have picture perfect time series data. At this time, one instant was given, this was faulty, true, false, such perfect data you would have. But in reality, it was all over a call. The call was not recorded, maybe So we see there's a lot of digital divide, that's this interdepartmental digital divide, I would say. This has to be addressed in organization. So in cases like these, you could ideally have a low code, no code platform there which has a voice to text transcription. And you translate the call, now you have the digital data with you. Now you probably, clean the data and feed it to your model to get a predictive analytics dashboard of how much to procure. So this POC to production track, this we would say, the more digitally mature you are, the better AI maturity is going to be. So the better way you'll be able to, put things to production and see value from it.
After 1.5 decades of digital transformation as a terminology, AI has come to expose all the loopholes in what we have been doing in the last 15 years. And we still find that we are not digitally matured to start using AI, right? Now, I would want any of you from IBM to take this call, because you've been hearing a lot from the different people on this topic of turning AI from cost center to value creator. And you've been working with lots of customers also, right? So what is your inputs on how do we address this as a governance aspect, right? So when companies want to invest in AI, from a governance standpoint, how do we plan ourselves or prepare ourselves so that the CFO next to me is happy about giving me the money? I kept him strategically here next to me.
He's the best CFO I've ever.
So any one of you can take it.
Yeah, no, I think very interesting perspectives from Ajay, Santosh, CFO perspective, health perspective. And I think if you look at the common denominator, and Sujata put it very rightly, that when you do the POCs, it's easy to demonstrate value, but when you scale it, I think that's where we'll end up in a lot of trouble. And that's what our experience when we are engaging with our customers at IBM. That's where we see that from POC to production, there is a lot of fallback, because you have the early euphoria of POC success, and then when the production, then you roll it back. And we have seen multiple instances like that. I think where we have to really see, and Sir pointed it rightly, is where is the value, where are the pain points, where is the maximum value, and can you bring about that technology? So we have been working with banks, we've been working with CPG companies, we've been working with health. Everywhere where we have kind of created an approach of identify where there is the highest value, right, and then approach that. And how do you scale? So is your data available? You have to do that assessment first before you get into production. Second, the areas of LLMs and all. How do you run smaller LLMs so that the cost aspect of the denominator part is minimized? You have various small LLMs, small foundation models are helping there. You have optimized GPU approach, right? Those are the cost part of it. And on the top side, you see more on the value side, whether it's in supply chain finance, you see marketing, you see in the production or the back office in the banks. That's where there's a lot of, I'll say, investments, which is more than what it is right now. So if you can hit those areas, that's what we are seeing working with the banks, where the back office, if you can make it leaner. For example, in trade finance, it's almost like one trade finance case, you would have almost 20 documents. And those are very complex documents that's there. But with the help of AI, with one of the banks that we have done, we almost cut down the whole processing time from 28 hours to 15 minutes. So their capacity is almost 5x now in terms of trade document processing. So that's where they see value, and they have captured significant market share in the trade market because of that ability. So that's at a top line, they are getting that benefit. So see where there is a value, see is your data ready, and then the third aspect is the governance. Rohit, if you want to
Just want to add on top of it, it's saying IBM has been the prime zero of all the AI technology. So I think right away start from Arvind Krishna, who is our friendly. He says for the last 2.5 to 3 years, we have put $3.5 billion savings by using AI in-house. When I say in-house, these are different, flavors of IBM organization, whether it is HR, procurement, sales,
ask IT, and ask incentives. And by the way, all IBMers in this room will be saying the salaries next increments are decided by AI. How much is going to be the increment? Of course, there is a HIL, human in the group, which says, I agree, right? Or I don't agree. So, but yeah, so I think that's where we see those lot of use cases within our organization, and we take them across and put this as a low code, no code platform, and right click on it, templatize already, IBM knowledge is there, you copy it into a new agent, connect to the data sources and start running, right? And that's the whole capability of bringing in platform which can help you onboard this journey in a much faster, much quicker.
Thank you. Nagaraj, you must take note that using AI to decide increments, and it should be biased hallucination towards us. Right? Yeah. I this theme, we had a good set of discussions here, and logically have to bring this theme's discussion take us to the next two themes that we have. And so ROI, so look at other values that AI is providing other than direct top line and bottom line items is what is an outcome of this, the first theme discussion that we had. But the second theme is talking about scaling smart. So optimizing the infrastructure for infrastructure as well as talent. So both are a challenge for us today, right? So if you look at the whole infrastructure in terms of compute storage and the cloud utilizations, when it comes to AI, it's almost 50-60% of the actual cost goes towards this infrastructure itself. And of course, we rightly found that data readiness is very important for us. And I'm sure that most of the organization will go back to re-look at the digital transformation program to make sure the data is ready to be used as an input to AI. There's also a big talent shortfall globally because I think the model keeps, I think today there are more than 1,000 models available for us to use, and it keeps changing. It keeps new things keep coming up every week, and what we learned last week is not valid this week. So that's a talent shortfall that we are looking at, and there is also a requirement to reduce the operational cost at the same time, right? So this specific topic about how do we scale smartly by optimizing the infrastructure for AI workloads is what we are going to take up. And I would like to look to Durgaprasad and then see what principles should guide us when it comes to on-prem or cloud, when it comes to hybrid AI investments itself on the infrastructure standpoint.
I think it's an interesting question, and I think our thoughts have been driven by, I would say, a nice way that McKinsey has shaped the way you look at adopting AI. So you fall into three categories. Either you are a taker, or a shaper, or a maker, or a combination of these. Typically, when you do POCs, you may start almost in a taker mode. You will use somebody who's providing a service, and you will start seeing what is the outcome that's going to come out of it. And that typically, I think to Swarada's point, is where you start doing the POCs. And maybe one area where I would disagree is, I don't think anyone in the room will agree that the data is picture perfect. Nobody will have picture perfect data. So somewhere we need to have the tolerance to say, what is the outcome we are to go after? And what is the minimum threshold will meet the CFO's criteria, right? So that's where you want to start with. Then you could go from a taker to a shaper. So this could be that you can take a model, you could tweak it with weights and stuff like that, or you augment it with RAG, and start seeing what is more specific for you to use. And then you go to the third leg, and this is where, if you look at it from a cost perspective, you're going to have substantially more investment required, that you will be investing in your own GPUs, your own infrastructure, and start feeding a lot more domain-specific models to help you in the area of your industry. Of course, that's going to be a way to build your moat, but that also means you will need substantial investment. So in our case, predominantly, we've started work in the first two, and maybe starting taking baby steps in the third one. So that's the way we look at it. The infrastructure in most cases is either use something that's already out there, leverage it to start with, validate what you want to go ahead with, make sure it meets the outcomes you're targeting for, and are you making progressive, positive moves towards final rosier outcome. And then along with that, start shaping for the third step, which is the whole maker of what could be a domain specific and maybe a corporate mode for us from a AI perspective.
Yeah. So, in you, coming to you, Ravi, on this, how do you look at infrastructure in terms of hybrid or cloud, especially from an investment towards AI standpoint?
Yeah, that's a good question for SMF, given that the size of our operations and the community and trust-based type of services which we are enabled in. Investments will be judged on obviously 2 or 3 factors. One is patient experience. Anything which enhances patient experience will be something which we look forward for. Operational efficiencies, either reducing costs or increasing efficiencies in turnaround time. Those are other things we look at. So we have recently, it's only recent we are sort of looking at AI with a very hard look at it, maybe 6 months only. But we would probably, we would do a POCs, but we would like to actually start as a maker itself in terms of having exposed to certain tools and the fact that we cannot really let out medical data or even the PI type of data. We would like to get some hands-on and then see, does it make a good thing for actually making an investment? So those are the type of initial thoughts which we are having. One of the, as an example, we could say, initially, we have a lot of vendors coming and approaching us. We could do the appointment system. Yeah, it's a good feature. Can be handled 24 hours, not 24/7, whereas our appointment system works now based on receptionists being there from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So that looks like an advantage, but it's a very structured transaction. You could do that similar, having a patient app, having it on a web portal. So while it may not make a good sense to actually go in for AI for that, just explore that what are its limitations and what can it be best used for. As Ajay was mentioning, we could do multilingual voice, in which case it's a different type of a transaction, talking to the patient, and it's a structured transaction, but it's multilingual. Now, we cater to patients in Chennai. We have Tamil, Malayalam, Telugu speaking patients, and we know from the data what is that, where are they coming from. We could engage them in that sort of a conversation. We could also use it when we are not there in person to take the calls, which means the service is available 24/7. So we have to sort of mix and match and see, does that make sense to that we are available 24/7. Sometimes there are humans, sometimes they're not there, you could still make an appointment, pay for it and you get a confirmation. So it's an add-on on top of our existing structured thing. Still, it's a benefit. If it expands the patient experience, that's a good thing. So we'll probably have to think of it that way and then see if we can actually do a small pilot study or actually run it out with the patients to see how they accept it. There's also the profile of patients who are long-term patients of SMF. For them, it might be easier to just pick a phone and talk rather than saying which doctor do you want, which date do you want, which slot do you want. These are all things which will come up when we actually go through that. We're sort of foreseeing that some profile of the patients may not like that. So we might have a mix of match of both.
So when we stop investing, or we don't invest for a period of time, we say that we are accumulating debt, and the frequent thing is we are accumulating technical debt, we are accumulating financial debt by not investing. So coming to you, Sudhir, how can we scale AI today so that we don't come back after a year and say we have lots of AI debt in the organization, so we couldn't do this?
Sundaram Finance is asking question. Tough question.
We will lease equipment from you, right, for our AI infrastructure.
I know how to define this tech debt. Usually, tech debt, financial debt is defined as the technology or money that you put in, which now has become obsolete or has become very difficult to get returns from, is how it is generally decided. Right? So, when I look at this whole conversation on AI, My fundamental problem with any of this is we are saying we are doing POC for AI. We are investing technology for AI. Fundamentally, I don't agree with that. I have to invest technology or to POC for a business problem. AI may incidentally come inside. So many times we create debt because we are trying to do something with AI, not trying to solve the problem. That's the first point, the way I look at it. The second is, in doing this AI, more than technology debt and financial debt, we should not get business debt. Meaning, there are processes and ways business do work. You will not end up creating something which is very difficult for you to change later. Because you have given that experience to a customer, whatever, and then, that is very critical. So that's the second point. In the traditional sense, what you say, technology debt, financial debt, I think to some extent will happen because this technology is evolving very, very fast. Right? So, we have to be prepared, saying that it is like buying some of the phones. Right? Every year, a new model comes. Doesn't mean that a phone 3 years ago can't be used. It depends on what you wanted to use that phone for. Right? So, as long as we say for the scope of the problem that I'm defining, this is the technology or this is AI that I'm using, I should be prepared to say even if a new one comes, as long as it's fit for purpose, I need to continue using it. Okay, that is one way of looking at it. The other is, it is about how much of this technology you own versus how much you get it as a service or quote unquote rent from somebody is a very important point. So your earlier question on how much you do in-house and all of that is related to this. Right? So if you have this habit of I will get some GPUs, I put everything into it, you end up creating debt. But if you say that I am in this mode of understanding whatever, there are service providers who will give you that service, leverage them, you learn, you can always switch to a new thing when they bring something, switch to another person, until you have come to a point where you feel that I think I have cracked this problem and I know what it is. Then, to what Mr. Durgaprasad said, you can then become a maker, right? So, I think the choices are it's very difficult to give one answer, but I think these type of thought process, if it is there, probably will handle it.
Yeah, I think the term that you used, business debt, which we didn't document here, actually, it's a very important aspect. I want to put that to you, Sujata, because if you don't invest, so we as a consumer, we say technology debt, we didn't do this for 5 years, so we have to do this. But in your case, it might end up as a business debt because you are competing on the front. So how do you actually balance decisions in terms of infrastructure when it comes to AI from a situation where you don't end up with a business debt?
Thank you. I think I would probably start from how beautifully Sudhir put it. Just because you have a new phone is coming 3 years back, a phone, it doesn't mean you can't. You stop using the phone. So similarly, when we talk about infrastructure, you will have on-prem, cloud, hybrid, and all of it. Now, especially it becomes a challenge when you have to go on-prem, right? You never know what is the scale of compute that the on-premise deployment is going to have. Someone might run on legacy systems. Someone might have a 4 GB RAM. Someone might have the latest infrastructure running 128 GB RAM with pin codes. We never know. So this is a plethora of cases. Now, this all comes to choosing the right size model, we would say. In fact, what we would say is don't go by the hype just because something is on the top of the cycle. LLMs are today really hyped up. Yes, it's useful, not diminishing its usefulness. But do you throw an LLM at every problem? No. So, in fact, the good old statistical machine learning techniques, something like anomaly detection, forecasting, they run super good. The accuracy is really good. You can explain things why you made a decision. If you say your server is probably going to run into issues, your application response time is going to spike. If you make a forecasting prediction, the good old statistical machine learning techniques can actually explain as to your response time was 300 ms. Now it has increased to 1.2 seconds. It's a 4x increase from a baseline normal, and hence I predict that something like this is going to happen in the next 8 hours. Now, this is very important in the enterprise context. Now, this black boxing is not acceptable. You can't just go tell the CTO that the monitoring software told you that it does it's an outage. He'll obviously ask what is the reason. You'll have to come up with an explanation. So talking about scaling and infrastructures, with respect to AI, what we would say is, do a deep dive analysis on what the use cases. It is not about just plugging in AI into the scenario. Find out what use case you're solving, what is the problem that you're solving, and be wary about the choice of models that you have. At least in our experience that we see, for a lot of enterprise use cases, the good old statistical machine learning techniques do work because you don't have a lot of technical debt. You have to throw LLM, it's just not the model. You have to come with a compute. How are you going to manage the compute? Now you have the compute system ready. How are you going to monitor it? Now you'll have additional cost of having a monitoring solution that's going to run. So it's important to do a careful analysis of each use case and then do a careful vetting of the choice of solutions you're going to deploy.
So I think my take is that we should get the courage to tell the board this problem does not require AI. I think that is what we should cultivate. We said because the problem with the board today is the question comes: are we using AI? If we don't use AI, something is going wrong. So we should have the courage. No, this does not require AI to be solved. Your MS Excel will work.
In the previous set of technologies, the CTOs or the technology people in the organization was finding it tough to convince the board to adopt our technology. This time it's reverse.
Yes. And thanks to
the board is asking.
Thanks to ChatGPT and Copilot, where now the request comes, give us the database. We will upload to the LLM and we ask whatever we want to ask. That has become the conversation now, right?
Suresh, if you allow me,
Yes,
listen to
please.
this conversation, and then I run two heads of CFO where I block things, and then I have another head where skill is one of my KPIs. President, in charge of HR, I have to see last skill, and then we are talking about technical debt or business debt. So one day I was talking about communication. I felt communication is universal for efficiency of everyone. All people that are there in the organization, and we felt we can make communication as a hobby. Maybe it is better sure, because then people will internalize through different modes rather than standardize press through training. And then that is the point I felt, can AI also become a hobby? In my context was this, I said to myself, and I'll tell you how I solved my problem. I'm a board member. That's the third head that I run. I'm a board member. So just to solve my problem. So the context was this. See, where AI will evolve, even the best provider of AI today are not very clear. And when I looked at my problem, the problems are plenty. Pain points are plenty. So it is not that few people can solve all those because they do not have the technical expertise. They do not have the functional expertise. And what AI has brought in is it has removed those connectors. A person who is expert functionally is now enabled enough to solve this problem. If that is so, can I brought in AI as a hobby? Anyone can come in anytime, anyone can go anytime. So the awareness is not an issue because he is coming willingly, he is going willingly. And second, if 1% of this take interest, then I feel what Satyan will find it difficult. I'll tell Satyan, now I have a gem with me. Can you handhold and can you get me through? And when I thought from my third hat as a board member, where I see, I'm not missing out on a technical debt, where my investments are going, how I'm channelizing, I'm utilizing, I felt perhaps it's not wrong. And it's something you have to try it out. But I felt, maybe it will work. Maybe it will work.
Yes. Tell me when you're wearing the HR hat. That's when we go and say, it's easy for him, right? Put HR hat, I want 10 new people. Put the CFO hat, approved. Very interesting.
Because I'm director of finance designate, this, after the HR hat, once I sign, they don't come again. Now you give another signature with finance action.
Very nice. So now coming to Jegadeeswaran, because I know you are trying to build lots of tools with AI in your environment, and now my question is on the talent part, right? How do you balance in-house talent versus leveraging talent that is available with ecosystem vendors to ensure that you are able to work on those AI projects that you want to actually do?
Thanks for myself, Jegadeeswaran. So we belong to India's leading aftermarket industry. So
talent pool with respect to AI in the market is very less, and getting the talented resources on AI is also difficult. And considering the cost perspective, by implementing the AI project, that is also again a big challenging task. So how we mitigate and avoid these things? Like we partner with the players like IBM or equivalent partners. We train the internal talent pool along with the partners so that the skill coexists with the internal talent. And we work with partners and we also do the AI projects along with the business. So we identify the business case based on the strategic problems and align those problems along with the AI. And I can give one example which we worked out recently. We do the vehicle valuation, work with leading gear websites as well as the OEM system. So when we get the orders for the vehicle valuation, identifying the right value for that vehicle is little difficult. We have to go for various manual work. So we create a model which will speed up the process wherein we can able to create a more impact on the productivity. As well as the vehicle value also will be nearly accurate than when we do with the physical value. So likewise we identify the business cases which will give a bigger impact with a shorter time. And this will also have a minimal impact on the financial system, so that the entire stakeholders in this aspect will get satisfied, especially on the top level, considering the board, then the investment which we get from the external parties, then the customers and the stakeholders from the client system. The entire ecosystem will get satisfied, and the internal the workforce also get trained on the new aspects, and they will also come up with saying that once the project is over, then they will move to the next project, which will also have a moral booster for them to stick into the organization.
Nagaraj, your take on how do we balance internal knowledge versus leveraging the knowledge of the partners?
Yeah. So our own experience at the Hindu has been that we generally start with the ideas ourselves, but very quickly we involve our partners. We just like we have hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, we have hybrid AI providers and multi-AI providers. So generally what happens is, and this is also one of the points I wanted to make on the skills part of it. One major advantage, especially if you're working in the Gen AI space with LLMs, is English is your programming language. As long as you can communicate effectively in English to give instructions to the system, you're good. Which means for our business, we are filled with excellent communicators. As you can imagine, people write stories that millions of people read. So we do know how to instruct an LLM. But having said that, and this is where I go back to answering the part about how far we go and when we involve partners. So the prototype part of it, the demo part of it, is something that we manage ourselves with LLMs. Typically, when an idea comes through, we actually test it out with 3 or 4 different providers. At this point, we have a very nice feel for this problem is best solved by using this model. But just in case, we make sure that we try and use at least two different providers. Most of the time, again, these days, our initial thesis is validated, meaning if we feel that partner A is better for us for this project, and it turns out that partner A does give us better results. So when we want to productionize is where we go to our partner, we work with their customer engineering teams, and we productionize it. We've also found a nice way to incentivize our providers to give us a little bit more than they normally would, which is both Suresh and I are very proud to say that since 2023, every year we win some worldwide award for one of our AI projects. So that itself becomes an incentive in terms of when we ask the partner for help, they know that very likely we will submit them for entries. When we win, we will call them out, we'll acknowledge them, we'll say, hey, we worked with this provider to do this. And all the amplification that's generally available for us through our publication comes into play, obviously. And now that's not an advantage that all of us might have, but I'm sure that in terms of each of our industry bodies, there is some kind of award, and obviously that is an incentive for people to go in. So, to very quickly answer your question, POCs, we take care of it in-house. When we are good to go for production, we do bring in our respective partners. We worked with IBM before, we worked with Google's Vertex models, we work with AWS's Bedrock models, we use OpenAI's APIs. So we deal with all of these. The one thing that I did want to say, Suresh, earlier part about the technical debt, I was just waiting for a chance to speak. On the technical debt thing, two things. One is I'm keenly aware that entire architectures are changing, which means the nature of the technology, how the things that we took for granted for some of the technologies, that itself could change. Not for all of us, but particularly I think if we work in industries where you see a huge application for quantum computing, for example, the nature of how we might develop software for quantum computing itself might change. That's just one thing I want to say about technical debt. The other part about technical debt is particularly with AI systems, both classical AI systems and generative AI systems, is increasingly it is becoming very difficult to reverse a decision. So I know that as a former journalist, I make fun of people who use the word revert the wrong way. We generally say revert for get back to me, but revert in reality means you go back to a previous state, right? But going back to a previous state, which if you did not do AI, you would manage with your CI/CD pipelines and your version control software in tandem. That is definitely going to change as we use more and more AI developed code, AI written code, AI structures. We may not understand what's happening inside our pipelines. If something went wrong, we may not actually know what was the last stable build for that particular pipeline. That's definitely something that worries me. It's not a problem today, but for sure I see it as a problem in the future. And I would definitely keep that in mind when we speak about scaling and going into production and so on.
And so, your take on this topic?
So I just want to add that I feel AI is a life skill. And I go with other words that has become a hobby. So this whole concept of there are AI people should grow. There are only people, and they can learn. If you do some architecture, plumbing work, that kind of work, you might need some small bit of it. But the way the tools are evolving, you and me can learn it. Right? So unless it becomes a passion for people to learn and there is an environment that you create for people to try out things, it becomes difficult. If you always depend and say this is AI, non-AI people, I think the problem starts there.
So it's going to become like your MS Office in the future, where you without AI,
More than
nothing
I
happens.
don't think this office is probably, and I think I agree to what he says, it's a language.
Yeah.
This is, because you need to know what to ask,
Yes.
how to give a context
Yes.
to that ask. Right? That is what you need to know. If you don't know that, you don't get the answer.
Correct.
Right? So I think that's the skill. Maybe we are overhyping the AI skill required. Okay, so this paranoia about AI, this is why I'm saying the POC, AI POC. So we are not trying to solve our problem. We are actually trying to adopt a technology or something that has come more than solving our problem. If I do that, I think then it will solve the problem. I think it's very important for everybody to understand this.
Yes. And very clearly, we need to understand that the knowledge required to build an LLM and the knowledge required to interact with the LLM are two different knowledge sets. And majority of the people would only require the knowledge to interact with the LLM, but there will be still a core team that will be required, who highly skilled, who will build those LLMs, right?
I think it's just to add, to bring in the context of an enterprise data and a model, it is not a consumer AI, it is an enterprise AI. So I think when we move from consumer to an enterprise, I think one important thing I think everybody is alluding to is what is the risk? What is the responsible AI framework? What is the governance layer? Can I go trace back if RBI comes and audits me? Can I go trace back of why an AI model has rejected a loan for this X person versus the Y person? It should actually go back and give a full A to B kind of a layered process back. It is not a black box. It is a decision making capability. Because when you are asking something, answering something is a one consumer capability. But if you are bringing in agentic to bring in decision making as part of your workflow and process, it is actually a human in loop kind of a responsible AI framework which needs to be ensured that it is in place. Otherwise, you will never bring it into production.
Yes. Yes. So we depend more on his reasoning capabilities, but we have to make sure that why it reasoned that way is also audit trailable, so that we can actually establish that to any regulator if they want.
Observability. You have to build more observability. Many of the tools and they are providing, because everything when you get to enterprise has to be explainable. Right? So unless you observe, you can't explain. So I think that is happening. So I'm again going back to the talent issue. Everybody need not know how to create that observability. It's already built in, or a few people need to know how to configure and use it. The rest of the people are just use it.
Yes. So that discussion brings us to the end of the second theme, which is about scaling smart. And we are going to the last theme for today's session, which is strategic foresight, investing wisely in a rapidly evolving AI landscape. So what we understood now is the innovation cycles are collapsed. Now we are talking about, I was discussing the other day about morning sprint, afternoon sprint and evening sprint, coming up with 3 different versions of the product. We are talking in that language today, not sprint that runs for a week, right? But 40% of the enterprises already invested in AI tools, but tools that have got deprecated now. That means they did an investment, but after 6 months they find that hey, this tool is of no use because something else has come already. So that puts us 2 steps back. Do I have to put the investment today? Will this be there tomorrow or not? Because every day something keeps changing. And organizations that actually align their AI strategy with the business strategy and took decision properly, they have seen some 30-50% improvements in the investment that they have made. Okay, but what is going to happen in 2026, 2027 is what we have to think about. And on this specific topic, I'm coming to you, Ajay, first. So how do we time the AI investments with all we have learned in the last 2 years?
So again, I'll come back to the same response which I had some time back, right? Depending on what's your state of business, you map your business goals and you see, does this really need AI to solve for it? That's the first part to it. The second part to it is, what percentage of that can be solved from a perspective that, a business could be whatever, right? I mean, it could be selling 2-wheelers, it could be selling loans for trucks or whatever, right? But end of it, when you look at, is it going to yield any kind of result for you? If you're very clear about it, some of it, most of the problems that we see today, right? simple analytics could solve a lot of it, which nobody addresses today, right? You're jumping on saying that, you want to use AI for it. You really need for it, right? I mean, that's one of my first things. The second point when I would like to address is bringing industrial scale change, right? You need to be clear about, what you really want to achieve. There's no point in, hopping onto everything when you're looking at, where you would want to scale. You're talking about maturities here. Does your business need you to be the first mover in that space?
Okay.
That's the question which I would always ask myself, right? You can also wait and watch. There are enough more people who are experts, who are young kids on the block, who are starting up companies in specialized areas where you can collaborate with, right? You don't need to be that first mover pumping in all that cash to try out technology. You're looking at a GPU, you're going to be built per minute, right? And that's going to be exorbitant if you're going to look at, spending on how much ever you want to research and things like that. So how do you want to structure it out? Figure out which technology is your urgent need, prioritize those, and if the technology is actually matured enough in the market, go ahead with it, move ahead. If not, wait for it. It's okay. You don't need to be looking at, jumping up stages so that, you're not going to. I come from a traditional financial services business, right? I mean, I'm selling trucks. That's one part of my portfolio. Commercial vehicle finance is a huge part of my portfolio. The other side is two-wheeler finance. Now, I can do pricing. I can do risk. I can do MarTech. When I talk about customers visiting into my super app or my website, what kind of waterfall do I need to be predicting? Who are the customers who need repeat engagement? Where am I going to build loyalty about so that my reward programs can be used better? There I would use AI, right? I mean, to predict these things, right? But more importantly, when I look at different states, what technology and what prioritization matters is what I would be looking at fixing, right? And that's the only space. I wait and watch in some of the spaces where you don't have clarity. Sometime back, I mean, we talk about AI today. 2 years back, we used to be talking about blockchain, right? Everybody spoke blockchain, right? I mean, you ask anybody in the universe, blockchain is the next big thing and things like that. Hardly we could find use cases. We couldn't find use cases. Remittances as a business had a use case. So, some people experimented, some were clear. Unless you've gotten that kind of information where you can make a decision, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So wait and watch and see how things. So wherever there's enough use cases where people have solved for, you're not going to make a huge difference in terms of being a first mover or a second mover or a third mover, right? I mean, there's not that kind of a competitive landscape at all. It's okay to be a little slow because the trade-off you're going to be talking about is quite. I might sound like a CFO when I talk this, but the point is the money which you're going to go push down the drain is not going to be really giving you that kind of material impact. So hold on to it and see what works. That's my 2 cents.
So Ravi, in your industry where healthcare, we know AI is actually giving lots of benefits. So how would you look at timing investments?
Well, since we have not actually sort of been on the journey long enough, and we are at a starting point now, so it's a good question in terms of how we want to time our journey. So we look at use cases which make sense for the hospital. For example, electronic medical record. It's unstructured. That's been a legacy. And we have been having a EMR system for more than 15, 20 years. So we have data spread across. Right now we're actually planning to implement the 4th hospital information system. Right from the time we had systems from 2004 or something. We've gone through so many systems. We have data. And the data related problems are there in terms of how they're gathered, they're unstructured, they're on different platforms. Some platforms are already deprecated, but the data is there. What can be made use of that, and what can be going forward? How can we capture it in a more systematic way? So one of the examples was to actually see if our voice to speech to text and a conversation between doctor and patient. There are products and solutions available in the market which can do that, which will look like as if it's a single sort of text, rolling text with a conversation. What patient says about their prior history probably, and doctor notes ask some questions, get some feedback from them, and diagnosis statements are made. So those are all captured, and doctor can prescribe. It's all coming as a sort of a visit summary. But now it is being captured and stored in a structured manner. So while it looks as if it is just a sort of summary of what's happened as a visit or whatever, you are actually creating structured data, which will help now going forward to do more analysis and all that. So that is one part. It helps both ways in quickening the visit itself in terms of more pleasant experiences. Doctor doesn't spend time typing or has another assistant doing some work. These are all operational efficiencies we got. The other thing coming out of such structured data is actually research opportunities. We also have a lot of DNB programs, where the DNB students have to, as part of their course, they do some research. We have a statistician in the hospital. We run statistical packages like IBM SPSS we use. So that is one part of it. Right now, they ask IT for, do you have data for the last 10 years about this? Yes, we give them an Excel and they go ahead and do it in IBM SPSS. But we would like to actually be telling them what you can do. We have this much data. It's already been structured. The legacy data, there's a big large amount of data which we want to actually cleanse and structure it, or at least be able to interrogate it structurally in a manner which works for our 18 specialties or so. So we should be able to do that, and then give the whole lot of data to for research. It could be both internal research for our DNB students. It could be partnership research with government organizations, etc. So we are sort of going down that pathway. So there are two uses for it.
So we are talking about how to time the AI investments, and the familiar consultant terminology is grab the low hanging fruits, right? So I would like to ask Santosh, how would you capture the low hanging fruits while also looking at capability building over the long term from an AI standpoint?
I think during the conversation, we already mentioned that there are 1,000 models which are available today. What is available today is not there tomorrow. It becomes obsolete. Today we are actually in a very, very fast moving world. I think most of us would have started their career more or less at the same time with 25, 30 years of experience. At that time, when we are building a platform, I think we will all agree that it takes minimum of 5 years to 10 years to get on into an established mode. But today, there are platforms which is available, which can actually build tools which can be deployed into production tomorrow. So that's the kind of fast world what we are there. And in that fast, if we have to plan both short term and long term, there's no one size that fits to everybody. So as a short term goal, what we do is that we work with various OEMs, various technology partners, identify so-called low-hanging fruits, work along with them, deploy it, and start getting it to be there on the production. From a long-term perspective, it's only two things which we think for us. One is build culture over a period of time. Okay, two things under the long-term. One is build culture. One is build capabilities as well. Today, Ajay was mentioning that 2 years before we were speaking about blockchain. With the same crowd, 5 years before we were talking about cloud technologies. Today, does anybody talk or think about saying is cloud needed? It's all taken for granted because it has been established model. And today we also have people who can work very easily on one cloud, multi-cloud, and very easily shift from one cloud to another cloud. Even today, it's becoming difficult to shift from one house to another house, but it is becoming very easy to shift from one cloud to another cloud. So from a long-term perspective, we are building in capabilities internally to say what are all the models which can be easily workable. With all this ecosystem, security is something which is also very important. 1 year before, we were talking about cybersecurity. Everything and anything, we talk only about security. In this AI journey, somewhere people are missing talking about security, but that is much, much more important in a longer term goal to talk about security. And transformation, for example, in my organization, which is more into motors, if you ask me who is the person who did a good work in transformation, It is not CIO or a CDO, but it is actually a COVID officer.
Okay.
COVID, when it came across, all the people who were working on brick and mortar started talking about technology, and there has been a tremendous transformation. So in our long journey, one is capability building, one is building a secure environment, and probably putting across goals for the people to completely transform from a culture perspective also to adopt technology.
You touched upon we are missing the security discussion, right? So I will jump directly to Sujata now. Uh, we have to invest today. At the same time, we have to be prepared to make sure that all the regulatory changes that comes up doesn't harm us. So how do we future-proof my AI investment so that it can withstand any regulatory changes that can come up? Because we don't know at this point in time how there is going to evolve.
Okay, perfect. Actually, thank you for bringing in the topic of security. So today, if you see the world we are today, the consumers are much more digitally and privacy aware than what they were a decade ago. And in fact, governments are also warming up to this fact. Case in point, we had GDPR being rolled out in EU. India is coming up with DPDPA. In fact, there are verticals which have certain bindings, HIPAA compliance for healthcare. So we see the gender narration has been, shifted towards more responsible way, security in built AI. So the way moving forward it should be is you build security and privacy by design right from day one when you start development, rather than giving it an afterthought instead of having it as like one of your checklist items. It is important you build it by design. So Grow Corporation, how we see is we ensure this privacy is built by design, so we don't kill on customers' data. By chance, in case you have to look at customer data, for example, let's say you have to, do a forecast for customers' revenue, you ideally have to look at the past data to make a forecast, right? Even in these cases, we ensure data is strictly anonymized. I only have to look at the numeric value. I don't even need to know what is the customer name, what is their business start. None of this is required for me to do a plain machine learning based forecasting. So by ensuring practices like these, ensuring there is as minimal use of AI, a minimal use of data as possible, and even in case you have to ensure data is strictly anonymized. Only when you incorporate these principles right from day one, can you ensure you are more regulatorily, you're compliant to the local geographical laws and ensuring data sovereignty. So we in fact imbibe this as a very strong cultural practice. So we operate the entire tech stack. We operate our own data centers. The models here are AI models here are built in house. The softwares are built in house. So because we have data centers in a lot of regions, those regions' data stays in their geographical limits. And because we are compliant to the local geographical laws, it becomes easier to be much more certified by the compliant laws. So the goal would be to build security and privacy by design right from day one rather than an afterthought.
And I had, since he spoke about security, I jumped directly to the question, but I still wanted to come back to on my previous question in terms of short-term wins and long-term capability building from a banking standpoint.
These are all the things only because of the business objective. Each and everything it has to be aligned with organizational goals and customer convenience. For example, we started this digital lending at NVIDIA. And we are also getting the data from the customers, for example, ID data and the GST returns and balance sheet, and our statements and other things. Then we are also getting that scanned and uploaded, and we do a centralized process, and based on that, we will be negotiated to the sanction. After that, these all the things short term at the time, and start small and scale fast. Then finally, we have just AI and ML model we already enabled. All of the things we already been connected with so many connectors. We already been interfaced with income tax authorities and the GST and MSC, and based on the we need to extract the data from respective customers. And within 45 to 1 hour, we will be in a position to extract, and immediately we will be in a position to do the sanction. For example, based on the sanction within 45 minutes or 2 hours or something like that, we will be able to do the classifications based on the thing. For example, we will be able to do the segregation with respect to green, amber, and red. We need to have 3 different classifications. For example, within 45 minutes, we need to get the complete customer details without any documentary fault or legal technical evaluation. Immediately, we will be in a position to send it across the sanction. Then anything, the problem happened with respect to constitution change or any legal formalities or something like that, it will be put into the amber bucket. Finally, any red or any something like that, any audit comment or something like that, we will be in a position to red category. For example, 10% falling down to green and 80% falling down to amber and again 10% falling down to red. All of the things we were just based on building the BRE and the scorecard model. Again, we are also keep on changing our strategy to going to decision based. Why are you falling the 80% of the amber? How far we are going to match with the green? Then we are also doing the segregation. Again, 40% of the data will fall into green. These are all the things we are also doing. So based on the things, we are also doing the building.
And I'm coming back to Satya
Yeah.
and Rohit again. Any one of you
No.
can take on this specific topic of how do we invest wisely in a rapidly changing environment.
I think great perspectives from all the panelists. I think we see from IBM, I think we see 4 layers primarily, and where to invest and where to stay with dynamic. So the GPU infrastructure cost we anticipate will get more and more going down. So what we are saying is that for certain banks and all, some banks need to protect the data. They may go for on-prem, but keep a hybrid approach, leverage somewhere cloud-based infrastructure, somewhere you need on-prem if required, where you feel data is very solid protected asset. So we anticipate that investment, you keep it kind of fluid in the sense that as it will get more commoditized. The LLMs we are seeing is, as we rightly said, thousands of LLMs, Hugging Face, we have a partnership. We get any LLMs, small LLMs, foundation models. So that also is getting more and more available, right? So you have a choice there. I think the data layer is going to be very important, because if you keep that layer ready, protected, secure, and make it ready for AI. So that layer you should give a serious consideration in data layer investment. And on top of that, the AI use cases layer. So you will have a large set of people within your enterprise using Copilot, ChatGPT for doing routine email response, research and all, and you'll see a wide set of people doing it. So spend there wisely, but invest more where you are actually hitting a business process and bringing in significant efficiency, or from a revenue generation or a cost efficiency, time to market, a new business model, innovation. That's where you want to bring AI and invest in that use cases areas. So we sometimes get carried away on saying, okay, we are using AI in our organization, but that's largely people are using for email response, research and all that. But that's a wide, so you have to carefully spend, and you kind of bucket your cost there and don't allow it to overspend there. You can take away a lot of money, right? But invest where the use cases in supply chain finance, or MarTech, or back office process efficiencies, right? That's where you start seeing as an enterprise a great value coming from AI. So I think we need to see these 4 layers and say, where should I invest? Where should I be watchful? Let the technology evolve, get more commoditized, so I get a lower operating cost on my technology there. So I spend wisely there. Don't over-invest in that area and then later lament that I invested and I'm not getting anything. So we had one bank, and they said, just for Q&A, I had to invest on such a huge, massive GPU infrastructure. It is not making sense. So we said you should go for a hybrid case where leverage for non-critical enterprise use case, leverage the cloud and cap it. But certain organizations are now saying, I have such a wonderful data with me, I can create my own LLM and make it as a competitive advantage in terms of my offerings, whether it's the loans or things like that. So we are seeing both the spectrum, and they are rightly
so, because data is your critical asset, and basis that you get that, whether it's AI or you want to get that market edge, right? That's where you should invest. So I think that's where we should invest wisely.
So when a couple of years back, when we had the AI was already it was in the hype phase 2 years back, right? So I used to keep telling that it increases the happiness quotient of my staff. We don't really see big returns anywhere. Happiness quotient, people are very happy. Lots of mails that I receive from my colleague look like Shashi Tharoor has drafted that. Because I know how they used to write emails before. So now that mails looks very beautiful. All you need a dictionary to understand what they're telling. But we have come a long way from there today to even really talk about, hey, where do we find ROI? So this whole discussion, if I want to summarize there, right?
One last example, and this is like a cross industry. So we were talking to one fintech, and they said, they have created Gen AI based RFP response capability. So just give the RFP to that system, and it will develop a beautiful 100-page response. We are doing a proof of concept with one enterprise. He said, I have thousands of procurement RFPs. Help me generate RFP using Gen AI. And then with Indian Oil, we did a POC of evaluating the RFP. So the entire process of RFP generation, RFP response, and RFP evaluation can be completely almost getting automated, and you are bringing a big impact there. I mean, that's a big in terms of evaluation and all that, right? So we are seeing that kind of impacts also happening, and at the same time, we are seeing the simple email drafting, research, those things happening. So both sides are happening.
Yeah. I think we have come from that simple mail to real use cases that are coming back.
Very truly, just another 30 seconds for me. He was talking about RFP, right? So, as I told you, we work with government, we work with STUs, and the tender document which comes is around 350 pages. Humanly not possible to read through 350 pages and submit a proposal. There are hundreds of possibilities of errors coming in. Today, as we speak, today morning we were speaking with an OEM to find out how we build an enterprise tool within ourselves, because these are very statutory related documents which cannot be sent to OpenAI. Summarize the 350-page document into a proposal basis of earlier data document submission. And trust me, the output is very good. So things have been completely changed as well. But having said, on a very lighter note, whatever the digital technology is, reading the into paper physically, that satisfaction cannot be matched with anybody else.
This should be on the headline tomorrow. Right. So our discussions, I could summarize that we actually have a modern ROI framework. So the framework where financial ROI, of course, has to be there, because when CFO sits next to me, I cannot avoid that. So financial ROI, and we also talk about capability ROI. We spoke about intelligence ROI, risk ROI, how it reduces the risk by using AI, and the strategic ROI. These are all the various facets through which we can look at ROI from AI investments itself. And I would like that take this as a summary of all the discussion that we had today. And please.
Adding the intangible benefits. You have a few big factors, such as your customer NPS impact.
Yeah.
80 to 90%. So that's an intangible benefit, but that also has to be added in.
Like we can put one more invisible ROI. So the ROI is there, but people cannot see that, it's intangible, right? People have to experience that actually.
I think that is also proven, right? So we are implementing AI projects, there will be tangible and intangible.
Yes.
But sometimes what will happen is intangible benefits are written in a big car in a PPT and presented to the board, and that's paid off.
Correct.
But that can also be having some impact, like 85% to 98%. There is a 10% impact.
Impact, yeah.
Like there will be a bottom line impact. That also be intangible, but that's also be a measurable one. So that could be one ROI with respect to AI.
Yes, sure.
Suresh, before you wrap up, quick reminder that you should definitely speak to this group about your risk of not investing
Okay.
framework.
So
I think it's important because we spoke about timing the investments in our last theme. The risk of not investing is definitely a critical component there.
correct. So that's a framework that I used to use normally. So normally we talk about ROI, right? Return on investments. But there are sometimes that we have to take risk of not investing. So at this point in time, if I don't invest in this project, what is the risk? That's the RONI framework, RONI. So sometimes we have to look at that angle also to say that if you don't invest, these are the risks, and that can be quantified back to say that there is a risk ROI that we are trying to avoid.
Opportunity
Yes, correct. So that's thanks Nagaraj for bringing that up. That's a RONI framework patented on my name. Free to use by anybody, of course. Yes, and all good things has to come open source. Yes, and I like open source. And most of the models we run in house are open source too. Yeah, and we have embedded all 150 years of Hindu's archives using open source embedding models, running on an AI infrastructure that was built in-house by buying hardware from Richie, which is behind my office.
So do we have a Hindu LLM?
We don't have Hindu LLM, but we have Hindu's archives running on AI-based semantic search. You can search to the archives directly, completely built on open source and including the hardware. Hardware assembled in-house.
I hope you are running on IBM open source.
Hindu isn't a language model, but Hindu language is modern.
That's the model language. Yeah. And thank you all of you for being here today, and it's been lots of learning for me also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Likewise.